This is Arthur, and I'm here at the roundtable with AronRa. Thank you very much for being here, sir. It is an honor and a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much.
You've had something like 6 million hits on your website on YouTube. How does it feel to be famous on the internet?
Well, in a sense, I'm only famous on the internet. You know, it's funny. I guess I just have one of those faces. I must blend into the crowd or something. I've only ever been recognized on the street once in my life.
Only once? That's very surprising, seeing your popularity on YouTube.
Yep, only once. And that, oddly enough, was in Las Vegas at the Circus Hotel. There was a Mexican national who was touring with his family, and he came up and says, "Excuse me, are you Aaron Ra?" And he had me pose for pictures with his family, and it was funny that nobody else recognizes me at all.
I'm willing to bet that you are recognized everywhere there are non-believers.
That's true. Now, when I go to secular conventions, science conventions, when I went to see Bill Nye speak in Arlington, I mean, in those venues where you know for sure that there are going to be science advocates and secularists and atheists and people of that sort, then I'm going to be recognized.
Did you think you would have such a big impact on so many people?
Oh, well, I'll tell you what I didn't expect. I mean, when I was in Ireland last week, and I was at the World Atheist Convention, and somebody stood up in the audience and said, had and effectively told Richard Dawkins and the hundreds of other delegates that were there that my videos had made an enormous impact on the English-speaking world. And you know, if you look at the video, I remained stoic and straight-faced, but inside I was giddy. I would not blow up my videos that high, but it was nice to hear someone else saying those sorts of things.
Why do you make your videos on YouTube?
Initially, it was because, as is obvious, I live in Texas. And Texas does not have a high rate of education. Most people don't go to college. When they do, they have to invest, yeah, tens of thousands of dollars and many years out of their lives. A lot of people will pass by information and never see the pattern. They never click it together. So only the only people that understand evolution really are the very slim number of collegiates who actually study that field. And most of the rest of the people, and of course, have no idea. They only know about evolution what they were told by their church. And they go to church twice a week, and they live in rural Texas, and they got past they got past eighth grade perhaps, and or they were homeschooled, and they have no idea. And so you're trying to take information that is going to be so hard to explain to somebody. You can't tell them, well, go to college for 10 years and then you'll figure it out. No, I have to be able to take a specific argument, like when somebody says that there's no such thing as a transitional species. I have to be able to show that there is a definition for that both scientists and the religious community know what the definition is. They agree that the definition is correct. I can show that the definition is correct, and then I can show a few hundred examples that perfectly fit that definition, so that there's no way to say, well, I thought there weren't any. There's no way to argue that there still aren't any transitionals. The point has been proven. Next. And you have to do this for people of a short attention span. And you can't write it, because if the word has 5 syllables, nobody can read it, or nobody will read it. They'll skim through and they'll pick out all the ands and the buts and the thes, and then that's it. That's all they'll get. Now, a whole bunch of gobbledygook in the middle. But if you show them a video, then they will actually watch it. And if the video is not more than 10 minutes long, they may actually get something out of it.
Have you always been interested in evolution and the origins of life?
No, it's not the origin of life that was always fascinating to me. It was the diversity of life, biodiversity, and the way that the tree of life branches outward. I mean, that observing the tree of life and where we are on it, and where other organisms are in relation to other organisms. This, to me, is rather the same as studying where you are in history. I mean, I want to know where I am on the phylogenetic tree in the exact same way that I want to know where I am on a map or a globe or in a period of history. I want to know where we are, chronologically, geographically, phylogenetically. There's a lot of people that I've met that have no idea. They can't make an association between what they see ahead of them and what they show it in a representation on a map. They can't think in that dimension. I've literally met people like this who will get home by roadblocks or by road markers, but you show them a map and they're useless. And I think a lot of the problem with people trying to comprehend the phylogeny is maybe there's that same sort of a disconnect. It's too abstract to get, perhaps. I don't know.
That is very true. But how can we explain to creationists that amphibians are still fish, that birds are still dinosaurs, and humans are still apes?
In each of those three examples, the best answer I can give is that um, birds are dinosaurs now. Humans are apes now. And what that means is that it is impossible to find any trait that is definitive of all dinosaurs, which is not also present in birds. Birds are a subset of dinosaurs. It is impossible to give a definition. It's possible to give a definition of birds that distinguishes them among dinosaurs, but it is impossible to give a definition that distinguishes them from dinosaurs. And much the same thing applies with humans. When you define what an ape is, according to all the characteristics that all apes share in common, not just the apes that are alive today, but the other apes in the fossil record, and not just the great apes, but the lesser apes also. When you give a definition that includes all of the members already universally accepted as part of that group, you describe people. It is not possible to give a definition of every ape that we know that does not also include us. Much the same thing, it would be impossible to describe ducks in a way that distinguishes them from birds. So ducks are a subset of birds in exactly the same way that birds are a subset of dinosaurs. The same way humans are a subset of apes, in the same way that a lion is a subset of cats.
Are there any missing links or transitional species?
Well, we want to clarify what we mean by transitional species because there's an awful lot of confusion about that. Now, as I said, I did find a definition that scientists use and that the creationists are aware of. And matter of fact, I found this particular definition on a young Earth creationist website, and it was one that was also supported by scientists. A transitional fossil is one that looks like it's from an organism intermediate between two lineages, meaning that it has some characteristics of lineage A, some characteristics of lineage B, and probably some characteristics partway between the two. Transitional fossils can occur between groups of any taxonomic level, such as between species, between orders, etc. And ideally, the transitional fossils should be found stratigraphically between the first occurrence of the ancestral lineage and the first occurrence of the descendant lineage. Now, as I said, there's lots of different ways that people will define that. And in the correct definitions, I mean, somebody would say that we're all transitional species and every species that ever lived is a transitional species. But that is, by including everything, you've sort of rendered the definition meaningless, because there is a distinct difference between the species that we recognize as being transitional. And now these can be, for example, something really simple like let's imagine you have a bloodhound, and then you have a dachshund hound, and you're looking for the intermediate stage. You're looking for something that is morphologically intermediate. You want to establish that a relationship between these two dogs is at least possible. So you need to show something that has all of the ancestral traits or is evidently derived from that ancestral bloodhound and is not quite yet a dachshund. And so if you happen across a basset hound, that fits the bill. You are looking for something that has morphological characteristics intermediate between these two groups. It does not mean, it never did mean, that you have found the grandson of bloodhounds or the grandfather of dachshunds. It doesn't have to be a direct descendant or ancestor. It doesn't have to be biologically related. And a lot of creationists will argue that they won't accept a transitional species until they see absolutely every single father-son generation in the entire fossil record. And when they come up with something as impossible as that, it's obvious that they realize that what they're arguing for, they are already aware is not actually true, and that what they're arguing against, they are already aware is true, and they have already admitted however openly, that they will not accept any amount of evidence to the contrary. Their belief is a perspective of pretend, and that they're going to cling to that tenaciously regardless what the truth is.
If we evolved from apes, why are there still apes?
Yeah, I know that's the favorite question. I was asked this once upon a time by a young Earth creationist, and the answer that I gave back to her, she wanted to rebel against. But I said, okay, you understand that dogs, domestic dogs, are all derived from wolves? And she said, yes. And I said, well, why are there still wolves? And stunned, she said, well, that's a different question. And I said, no, it isn't. But when she realized that, that made the click. That was the chink in the armor of the belief system that caused the rest of it to cascade away. And I'm happy to say that particular person, she has given me credit for helping that transition, but she now runs a secular um, social network.
What makes us the dominant species on the planet if other animals can do what we can do?
The only thing I can think of that is unique or that may be unique among humanity is one of the most recent things we've started to do, and that's mathematics. Remember some fleeting memory about some other organism that might have done something mathematic, but I can't remember. It's too vague. So I'm going to say that it didn't happen. Right? I don't clearly remember any example, but we only started doing math in the last 3, 4 thousand years, maybe, and we didn't have a zero. So when you look at the really, really old works, the oldest works that men have ever written down, things like the Sumerian king list and things on that order of antiquity, when you get out into the before the invention of the number zero, you had a base 60 numeric system, and so the the Sumerian king list with the it's a sliding scale. It's not like you can take the numbers and divide them by 10 or take the numbers or divide them by 12, although sometimes that works. What it is the further out they go back in time, the longer the ages are. And it slides into a ridiculous number so that the oldest kings on record in the Sumerian king list ruled for some 30,000 years each.
How do you think religion comes into evolutionary biology?
My thought on religion is that at least relevant to Western religious beliefs, from the Zoroastrians on down, you have people that carved and dug in the dirt, and they made clay sculptures, and they made little figurines that looked like people. And what I figure really it must have happened was that people thought that, if I could make these figurines, then wouldn't it be great if I could make them come alive? And then, yeah, well, if you can make a story about making figurines come alive, then maybe those figurines became us. And then you're talking about somebody that made us as figurines. And so that's where you get the idea of gods. And that gods, the oldest gods, were just people walking around who could be injured or killed. They created people as little figurines, even in Enuma Elish, the oldest creation myth. It's just like Genesis 1, where they male and female created they them. Let us create man in our own image. And then one of the gods had to be sacrificed, and they were all washed in the blood of that god, and then the breath of life had to be breathed into them by the goddess. I think her name was Mami. And it's just like Genesis 1 in this story. So I think a lot of religious ideas came from our ability to do art. And then when you have traditions and maybe even societies developing an identity based on what they believe, and someone comes up and says, you know what, that's a really nice story. I've grown up with it since my grandmother's days, but I don't believe that. And now you're threatening the culture. I think psychologically, people develop this preferential belief where if reality is too frightening for them, a lot of people, it's just like in the